once you down-regulate your nervous system, you have discretionary access to start retraining your brain. And that's why we call it brain fitness, because once you retrain the brain, you can then think of those, quote, stressful experiences, but now you have that problem-solving mind operating.
I love the concept of brain fitness. And as a holistic practitioner, this is what I talk about all the time. It's fitting it into your day to make sure that you give your brain those opportunities to relax and really dive deep into what your desires are, what your wants are, what your capabilities are, to really awaken and unleash the power and the potential of the power that we have inside of us. This is just the most magnificent piece of technology that I've ever put my hands on. Hi, and welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Asha Patel-Hannon. I'm the host of the Patient Advocacy Initiative podcast. I am so thrilled and honored to have Dr. Patrick Porter here today to speak with us. He's a sought-after expert within the neuroscience and personal improvement industries. He's a best-selling author and the recipient of several awards, such as the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Interdisciplinary Association of Functional Neurosciences and Rehabilitation. His newest brain training platform is BrainTap. It's distinctively designed to activate the brain's neuroplasticity. And the BrainTap headset uses light and sound technology in combination with Dr. Porter's proprietary guided visualization audio sessions to help people achieve things from brain fitness, overcoming stress, losing weight, stopping smoking, managing pain, accelerating learning. The list goes on, enjoying quality sleep, everything that you can think of in lifestyle improvement. There's so much more to him, and I will share all of this in the show notes. But as always, I always share a fun fact. So a fun fact about Dr. Porter is that his father is the one that got him into brain fitness by teaching him the Silva method when he was a child. And his very first visualization audio was when he was 12 years old. So thank you so much, and welcome, Dr. Porter. Thank you for being here and being a part of our show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dr. Asha. It's great to be here.
Yeah, really excited to dive in today. So a large part of our purpose here at the PAI podcast is to really share information with patients about different modalities and things that are going to help us on our health and wellness journeys. And so I'd love to just start with the brain. What are the basics about the brain and the brain waves, and what do we need to know about that?
Well, our brain operates differently during different times of the day. For instance, in the morning, we need to have that cortisol reaction, that dopamine, basically the stress to get us out of bed and get us moving in the morning. And the brainwave that we're training then is called SMR, sensory motor rhythm. And this, unfortunately, is the brainwave that that atrophies as we age. So part of what we need to do is we need to exercise that. That's why just plain meditation when people go to alpha is so good. But this is like a high alpha. And what happens also during concussions and when somebody's having dementia or Alzheimer's, they lose this brainwave because it also has to do with cognition. So how do we recall information? So that's really important. And a lot of people misunderstand what meditation is or brain fitness is because there's a difference. Meditation, typically people do the same meditation, the same process, and that's not the way the brain operates. Like in the afternoon, for instance, at 2:00, when our temperature drops 2 degrees, we need to do a different type of meditation because our bodies are designed actually to live in the Serengeti, not in New Bern, North Carolina, or Washington State, or wherever you're at. The reality is that our body is tuned to the light of the sun. And what happens in the Serengeti around 2:00 is everybody's sleeping. So our body is designed to take a reboot at that time. But what we do here, especially in America, is we go get coffee, tea, sugar, some kind of stimulant. And this is neurologically bad because there's 3 systems of the body. One is the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and the neurohormonal. And if you're using the neurohormonal system to regulate your electrical system, which is the parasympathetic and sympathetic, then basically you're going to burn out because our physical body is finite, right? I mean, it has limited capacity. But our sympathetic and parasympathetic are pretty much infinite. I mean, energy is infinite. So we're energy beings. So in the afternoon, we recommend doing a deep theta training. This reboots the brain. You could also do a gamma training depending upon your experience. If you're dealing with dementia and things like that, I recommend gamma in the afternoon because the gamma is the bass drum of the brain. It keeps the brain in rhythm. And there's been a lot of research now that shows that gamma breaks down amyloid plaque, kind of like what you see There used to be an old Memorex commercial where the woman would sing and she would break a glass with her voice. Well, that's harmonics. So think of these brainwave frequencies like harmonics for the brain, and they tell the rest of the cells what to do. Our body is really always vibrating. It looks like it's still and, solid, but the reality is that it's moving very fast. In fact, so fast, we don't see it moving. And I like to tell people, it's kind of like watching a fan. A fan, you can't look through the fan blades when it's still because they're still, but as soon as you speed up that fan blade, you can look through it. And that's because it's moving at a different speed. So that's what's happening with the body. And then at night, of course, there's a whole different kind of training that we need to do with the brain. The brain needs to be shut down. It needs to be taken into a state of deep delta sleep. And delta is most associated with unconsciousness. And most people don't realize that back in 2015, our medical community finally realized that there is a lymphatic system above the neck. If you go into all of the textbooks in colleges before 2015, you're going to see the lymphatic system stops at the neck. Well, that's physiologically impossible because there's a law actually for the body's production. It says anywhere there's a blood vessel, there has to be a lymphatic vessel to carry out the toxins. So think of the lymph system as the garbage man of the system. But in the brain, they didn't realize we had one because they never studied it during deep delta sleep. So when you get to this level 4, this deep level sleep, the actual gates of the brain that open up the glial lymphomic system is what they call it. Now we can detox. So when somebody's thinking about sleep, there's been a lot of misinformation about sleep. The main thing is it's not about time of sleep. I mean, some people can sleep 6 hours. In fact, studies show 6.5 hours is the best time for longevity, which probably blows some people's minds, but it's more efficient sleep. I know people that sleep 10 hours that don't get good sleep because we need a minimum of 1 hour of deep sleep because that's how the brain detoxes. And we need at least 2 hours of REM sleep because this is how the brain processes our day, organizes it. So in the next day, we can categorize and organize those memories and use them for useful information in the days, weeks, and months to come. So during the day, we're literally going through a symphony of different brain waves. And to say you can just train the brain through meditation is totally misconception. It's not true. And we need to do things like movement. So for the brain, brainwaves are important, but movement is one of the best ways to move brainwaves as well. So the reason we have such a big brain as far as animals go is because we stood up, we started looking over the horizon and moving. So our body and our brain work best when moving. So if you're out there thinking, gosh, what's the best thing I can do for my brain? Besides, of course, BrainTap, that's my favorite. But you really need to, number one, you need to eat right because you can't outthink a bad diet. So if you're eating, if you're sitting on the couch eating potato chips all night and wondering why your brain isn't functioning, 2 hours of sitting limits the brain's oxygen by 10%. When somebody says sitting is the new smoking, it's actually worse than smoking because we know that smokers now have to go outside and stand and walk around and smoke. So at least they're moving, so there's a big difference there. But the reality is that we need to have, the second thing we need to do is move. I work with a gentleman who developed a technology called 60 Up. And like Bob Barker, he got him from not being able to walk and talk, and do everything that he used to do to now he's out golfing and walking. And we're incorporating that into our movement program. But if you don't have the 60 Up, you can start doing Tai Chi, yoga, some type of dance, something to get your body moving. Go for a walk. I mean, anything to get your body moving. And then number 3, you have to do some kind of brain fitness. And I believe there's 3 times during the day. And you can also do it through breath work as well. And we have those on BrainTap, but we need to increase the rhythm of the brain in the morning. We need to reboot it in the middle of the day, and we need to shut it down at night. So there's different breath work that does that.
Wow, so much to unpack there, but that was so much great information. So the idea, I want to really touch on real quick is the holistic approach that you just stated, that this is not just a one and done, or just do this one thing, or just meditate, or just do BrainTap. It's a whole approach of you can't outrun a bad nutrition plan. You have to get out and move and do something. And then also this idea of brain fitness. And, these days we're talking a lot about longevity and what longevity means. I feel like we've backtracked a lot in our society of how we're doing things of convenience, and we're not shutting down properly. And so this 3 times a day brain fitness thought process is incredible. And so I want to dive into, I'm going to show everybody, I have my BrainTap sitting right here. I want to talk a little bit more about that, Dr. Porter, like
Sure.
how do we use BrainTap? What does it do? And how does it help us with those 3 times a day of getting up, rebooting, and then really getting into deep sleep?
When I was part of the team that invented the first portable light and sound machine, we didn't have the science we have today to prove it. We just knew that people were relaxing, their hands became warm, their respiration down-regulated, and their pain went away. So we were looking for biofeedback methods. Now we have neurofeedback. We can actually measure what's going on with the brain. And so what we're learning is, and they also remember back in 2003 when they said, hey, we've mapped the human genome. We now have 1% of the human genome mapped, and they said, we're done. That's it. I mean, could you imagine passing your medical boards and you only answered one question out of 100? You would never pass. But that's what they said, because the 99% of our genetics changes so quickly and rapidly. Now, in 2018, they finally realized that this is something called epigenetics, which means above our genetics, there's something that's happening every 40 seconds. Our body is changing based on our environment, our thoughts, our foods, literally everything you're exposed to. So think of every cell of your body is basically reaching out to its surroundings and its internal environment in our body. And in our thoughts, everything is changing every 40 seconds. So if you're watching this podcast right now, you are totally different, not just at 50 million cells per second, but every gene expression has changed many times since we started this, based on the information you're hearing. So what we didn't know that at the time, right? But what we knew was if we presented frequencies in sound, we could put binaural beats into the ears, and they had to be with. That's why we have headphones. So we have, let's say we want to put a 10 hertz frequency, which is alpha, which is where we were looking back in the 80s, because we didn't know we could take people to theta. And I love it when people say they meditate and go to theta. I can tell you right now, I've only met a handful of people out of 30,000 that could do it on their own. And they think they can, but as soon as you put them on an EEG and you ask them to do it, they're not doing it. Even in India, where I've had some gurus, they weren't really doing it. They were going into low alpha, but they weren't going into theta, because it's a very small bandwidth. But with light and sound, we can guide the brain to specific brainwave patterns. And over the years, we've had think of it like a recipe. You go to the kitchen and you could put a master chef in there and have a great meal. You could put me in there and you wouldn't get much, but if you put me in a computer room and I have my algorithm, I can make the brain do things, because I've seen it for over 30 years, what makes the brain change. So sound is one of the most important things. So we introduced this sound, and what we do is we put a 300 hertz frequency in one ear, a 310 in the other. The brain doesn't hear either of those. It hears a phantom sound, and it's 10 hertz. So the amazing thing is that we're doing this all the time, because our brain actually operates on subtraction. There's too much information. So the brain is always filtering things out, and I tell people, just like going to the kitchen, if you're married and you say, hey, where's the salt? And your spouse says, it's right there on the counter. And you say, no, it isn't. They say, yes, it is. And then finally they get fed up. They walk out and they show you, hey, here's the salt. It's right here in front of you. And in psychology, we call that a stichtoma, because in the Bible, they said you can't see the sin of another with a stick in your eye. So they came up with the stichtoma thing. But what it literally means is we all have blind spots. Mm-hmm. So that being said, our brain is processing this reality based on our belief system. So if we believe something's possible, it shows up in our reality. It's already there. It's not that it's not there. It's just that we don't see it. Like there's opportunities that pass you all the time. Some people see those possibilities, some people don't. And then later, like the joke is, if you were to invest $1,000 in Apple back when it first started, you'd now be worth like $40 million, but a lot of people thought that was crazy. They'd never do it. So there's always these opportunities that come up. And when we look backwards, we can have them. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, we're going to present frequency of sound, light, and vibration that mimic our natural situation. So just if we could just think for a minute, if you and I were on your spaceship and we were heading toward Earth and we were to measure the Earth frequencies, our Earth has frequency response of 0.5 to 100. Now, our brain also has an evoked potential of 0.5 to 100, which means our brain is always mimicking its environment. So we go down and set near the ocean, it's going to be 10 hertz because water has an evoked potential of 10 hertz, which means it's broadcasting that frequency. It's saying, I'm water, I'm water. Now the body, we get close to it and we start to create alpha. Now alpha creates acetylcholine and other really good, feel good neurotransmitters. So we start to associate that feeling of love and appreciation with water because we have that chemical correspondence to it. So people go, I love the ocean. I love water. It's because we have to love it because we need it, right? We're 70 to 80% water. If we go to the mountains, we're going to resonate at 7.8 hertz frequency. That happens to be theta. Now, when you're in that environment, your body tries to mimic that environment. So it resonates to it. When you're in theta, the neurotransmitter, primary one that you produce, is called GABA. GABA produces and is a precursor to DMT. So that's why people have these kind of spiritual experiences, or they call them mountaintop experiences. People call them that. It's because you have that spontaneous intuitive breakthrough at that level of the mind, and you start solving your problems. That's why I call it the inventive mind. So this is true with every part of the world. So what we've done with the BrainTap is, because everything in creation, everything you're seeing is light and sound and vibration. The computer you're looking at is basically a bundle of electrons resonating in the harmonics that make it look like a computer screen, and we perceive it as that. And then we have little pixels in there that our brain's trying to figure out. All of that, if we break it all down, is all the same stuff. What makes that computer makes me. What makes the walls, which makes the trees, it's all the same. What we do is it forms into images and pictures, and our brain processes it. In neuroscience, they know that we only perceive 20% of reality. The other 80% we render. We literally make it up based on our belief system. So when we're doing the BrainTap, what we're doing is we're presenting information and helping them to rehearse new behaviors, new patterns, but most importantly, train the brain to be more open and receptive to positive possibilities. We're down-regulating, getting into more of a parasympathetic state, which is the rest, digest, and recovery state. Most people, unfortunately, are running around because they watch the news, or they're so caught up into the fear of life, they don't understand that life is meant to be a series of opportunities or challenges. It's not threats. The brain we can adapt to it. And a lot of people think there's a stress crisis out there. There's not a stress crisis. There's a capacity crisis. Some people can handle it fine. Those people that handle the stress, they're the leaders, or at least we hope they're the leaders, and they're helping us to get where we need to be. So with BrainTap, we're isolating them away from their environment. Their eyes are closed. We put earphones on. They have a visor. They're getting light, sound, and vibration. And the brain, which doesn't know the difference between real or imagined, begins to associate those sensations and feelings with these natural states of consciousness. Once you down-regulate your nervous system, you have discretionary access to start retraining your brain. And that's why we call it brain fitness, because once you retrain the brain, you can then think of those, quote, stressful experiences, but now you have that problem-solving mind operating. Mm-hmm. So the next time you get in that situation, you don't fold up and start crying or, get so stressed out you can't function. Your brain has a flow state. And that's really what we want to do, is we want to create capacity to handle those situations, because we're not going backwards. Nobody's getting rid of their phones or all their technology. So we need to upgrade the human brain so they can handle all of the stimulus, because, they say that if we could go back in time, pick up our grandparents, bring them to the future, our great-great-grandparents, they would die of neuroshock if we put them in Times Square. They just wouldn't be able to handle it. Today we just take it for granted. We walk through Times Square, this is awesome. And some people get into overwhelm, but, most people are just in awe because of all the stimulus. I remember growing up, we only had 3 television channels, if you believe that. And one of the biggest things we did as a child was, if we could wait till the TV turned off, usually it was around 12 o'clock, they would play the Star Spangled Banner and the TV would shut off. There'd be no shows after that. Mm-hmm. Now you can watch 24/7, 100 shows, and just keep your brain entertained with nonsense. Most of those shows are upregulating your nervous system.
Now it's in our hands,
Yes. Yeah. Now
it's not even in a TV anymore. It's in our hands. So,
so we have to upgrade the human biocomputer, if you will, because we're processing everything. Everything that happens around you, you are processing. And we all have a perfect memory. It's the recall system. And when we go into overwhelm, the brain just says, okay, we can't deal with that right now. So they put it in this place in your mind that in a vault, if you will. You were there, but you don't remember it because it was too much. It was too overwhelming.
Absolutely. I love the concept of brain fitness. And as a holistic practitioner, this is what I talk about all the time, is all the holistic part of this. But the biggest thing that when we talk about physical activity, when you talk about movement, we think of our physical body and the fitness that goes along with that, but our brain needs it too. And to have that ability to be able to shut down. And I've been doing this 21-day fitness journey, brain fitness journey with you. And I mean, I wake up more clear, with a much better clarity and less mental fog. And I know as a busy mom, working mom, I have 15 million hats that I wear in a minute sometimes. And it can be overwhelming. But what I've noticed since using it is that overwhelm starts to decrease with usage, with consistency. And I know that's a hard word for a lot of people, is the consistent piece to this, but it's just like getting in your physical fitness. It's just like the meal prepping and planning that we do for nutrition. It's fitting it into your day to make sure that you give your brain those opportunities to relax and really dive deep into what your desires are, what your wants are, what your capabilities are, to really awaken and unleash the power and the potential of the power that we have inside of us. And I think, this is just the most magnificent piece of technology that I've ever put my hands on. If there was one thing that you could tell people, Dr. Porter, that are listening right now, what is that one piece of advice when it comes to brain health and brain fitness that you can give somebody?
That your brain can be healed at any age, that everyone has a magnificent brain, that it only needs to turn on its capacity. We're not using our total capacity, but we have to, just like exercise, if we exercise, believe it or not, the hour after exercise is the best time for neuroplasticity, which means brain fitness. So if you could exercise, then do it. That's what the TBRX people do, that Tom Brady is a part of, and being serviced by Alex Guerra. After they're done doing their physical fitness, their PT, they have a 20-minute session of BrainTap, because that's the best time to train the brain. After therapy, we learn, grow, and develop through stress. Stress is not bad. Stress is a chance to upgrade our nervous system. But if we don't have that downtime to, integrate that stress, our brain just starts thinking, it's kind of like going to the gym every day and doing the same exercise. The muscles are going to atrophy. They're not going to grow and develop. That's why you have to have that day off. You exercise, you have a day off. Because of our lifestyle, right? We have all this stress. If we don't down-regulate it, take time. And I love what the Dalai Lama said. Somebody said, I don't have time to relax and meditate. He goes, okay, then do it twice a day. Because you'll find that we did a study with Julia Art, actually, with the top performers at Google and Microsoft in a burnout study we did. And we had them do 20 minutes a day. And at first they were resistant, but they increased their production 19%. So these were the top performers. So if you take that time, to, as they say in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, sharpen the saw, which is your brain, that's your most powerful asset. You're going to get more done, because if you're stressed out, worried, tired, you're not going to work efficiently anyway. So we live in an energy economy. So we have to upgrade our energy. And one of the best ways to do that is through light, sound, and vibration, and get the brain energized. Because it doesn't matter what else you do. If you don't have your brain functioning, what does it matter if you have a great physical body, but you don't have a brain? And I can tell you, when we went to RadFest, which is a big longevity conference, probably one of the largest in the world, we measured the brains of the people there. And I was shocked. They wanted to live forever, but they weren't doing anything for their brain, really. And you can't just take a pill. You can't have the pill without the skill. You've got to do the skills as well as the pill. And I'm a big advocate of nutrition, because we can't get it out of the food we're eating. So we've got to supplement in some way, make sure we get the greens in the morning, make sure we're drinking half our body's weight in ounces of water, make sure we're getting essential fats, our brain is mostly water and fat. So we need those things to, provide the building blocks for our brain. And then, of course, there's also nootropics that you can take that are very powerful, like the group that you're on with me with Awaken. They have really good nootropics that we've tested that work really well.
Fantastic. I love everything. I could sit and talk to you all day long, but I appreciate you being here. We may have to do another session with you at some point, but if anybody's interested in learning more about BrainTap or brain function and brain fitness, I will have all the ways to get in touch with myself, with Dr. Porter, about any of this in the show notes. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Porter, for being here and sharing all this wonderful information about how we can live longer lives and increase our longevity and really get our brains into better fitness. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.